This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. We're coming to you live from Manila in Thailand. Hello, Crystal.
Hello, Alma, and to all our viewers. Yes, I am Crystal Mapa of EBC Thailand Bureau, and we're bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines. The Philippine government missed its target of vaccinating 9 million people during its 3-day national vaccination days after it administered only 7.6 million jabs.
Cambodia's strongman, Prime Minister Hun Sen, who has led the country for more than 3 decades, on Thursday backed his eldest son to take over the top job, paving the way for a political dynasty.
Philippine police said they have arrested a suspect in the 2011 murder of an Italian Catholic missionary priest who worked with marginalized tribal people in the troubled southern island of Mindanao.
And the Lao People's Democratic Republic has become a member of both the WTO's Information Technology Agreement, or ITA, and ITA expansion, making it the first least developed country to join these agreements.
First in our program, the government missed its target of vaccinating 9 million people during its 3-day National Vaccination Days, or NVD, after it administered only 7.6 million jabs. Despite failing to reach the 9 million goal, National Vaccination Operations Center Chairperson Dr. Mirna Kabutahe said they are still happy with the outcome of the first national vaccination drive, as they were able to vaccinate over 2 million people per day. Let's listen in.
So we were able to jab 7.6 million for the 3 days. Hindi pa ho kompleto yung ating mga report. May updating that is happening, but we are very happy with the initial report kasi this is more than 2 times the daily vaccination rate. Kung tutusin talagang bayanihan. For the total individuals with the first doses, sa 3 araw na ito, we were able to reach 15%, 85% of the 7.6 million as first doses. So bringing to a total of 55 million. Yon yung mga individual na nagkaroon ng first doses simula po ng pagbabakuna natin noong February and March. Ang top performing regions for the 3 days based on the latest report, number 1 po ang Region 4A, pumapangalawa ang Region 3, at pumapangatlo po ang Region 7. Ang ating challenges was really the opportunity to extend our hours of vaccination. Yes, yung extension, pinirma ng ating 3 secretary, si Sec Duque, si Sec Galvez, at saka si Sec Dizon. At yes, yung Sec Rocky, tuloy-tuloy yung ating December 15 to 17 na second round ng ating National Vaccination Day.
She also said it will be up to the employers to decide whether to excuse employees who will get vaccinated during the extended period. Under Proclamation 1253, employees who get vaccinated will only be excused from work during the 3-day NVD or National Vaccination Drive.
Overseas Filipino workers or OFWs who are bound for countries included in the Philippines Red List due to the threat of the coronavirus disease 2019 Omicron variant will not be able to travel to their host nations for now, the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration or POEA said on Thursday. Let's listen in.
Base po doon sa pinaka-latest na IATF resolution, ang sinasabi po ng ating pamahalaan ngayon ay kanselado po lahat ng international flights na gagaling sa mga bansa na kung saan umiiral ngayon yung variant ng Omicron. Halimbawa po yung bansang galing ng South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, hindi po pinapayagang makalapag sa ating bansa. Ganun din po na idagdag ang bansang Austria, Belgium, Czech Republic, Hungary, Italy at Netherlands. Ang ibig sabihin, sila po ay nasa kategorya ngayon ng red list country. At bilang nasa kategorya ng red list country, kanselado po lahat ng incoming international flight. At pagkakanselado po ang international incoming flight, siyempre wala ring outbound international flight. Hindi po makakaalis ang ating mga OFWs na pupunta po sa mga nabanggit kong bansa dahil nga doon sa IATF resolution na yan. Kaya mag-i-issue po tayo sa POA ng advisory, labor advisory na nagsasabi na dahil sa IATF ito, wala po kayong sasakyan at hindi po kayo makakarating sa mga bansa na yan. Pero meron po tayo mga protocols at saka mga quarantine protocols sa mga nanggagaling po doon sa ibang bansa, sa mga nabanggit ko naman pong bansa. Kaya yun po ang ating susundan ngayon at i-implement kasi napaka-importante magbabakasyon magpapasko. Pag galing po kayo sa ibang bansa na ganyan at ito pong flight ninyo ay isang government-initiated flight o kaya NGO-initiated flight o kaya bayanihan flight, na inarrange po ng POLO o DFA, kayo po ay papayagan namang makalapag dito kapag kayo ay OFW. Kaya lang, meron tinatawag na health and quarantine protocols na kung saan mag-a-undergo po kayo ng facility-based 14-day quarantine which on the 7th day ay magte-test po kayo ng COVID. Pag negative po kayo, ay kukumpletohin po ninyo yung 14 para na sa gayon, kayo po ay makauwi na sa inyong kanya-kanyang probinsya.
WHO Country Representative Dr. Rabindra Abeyasinghe said it will be good to focus on samples of people who tested positive in points of entry during the last 10 days or 2 weeks to determine if the new COVID variant of Omicron or variant of concern has entered the country. Take a look.
I think we need to do whole genome sequencing now, and what is important from a genome sequencing perspective is because of the recent detection of the variant, we need to rapidly do genome sequencing of the most recent arrivals. There is a tendency and a delay in the Philippines to be sequencing samples that are 4 to 6 weeks arrived, collected earlier. Right now, I think the importance is to focus on those samples of people who detected positive points of entry or recent arrivals during the last 10 days or 2 weeks, because the likelihood of detecting the Omicron virus will be higher. We need to be aware of the fact that many countries have limited capacity for whole genome sequencing, and that's why I'm advocating that any returning traveler overseas should be sequenced as a priority so that we get a head start on being able to detect the arrival of the virus variant in the country.
Indonesians react over the new Omicron variant of COVID-19, which has rattled global markets and prompted some countries to tighten border controls. Let's listen in.
Ya pendapat kayaknya saya jualan kopi, jualan minuman, berharap kalau banyak yang lewat pada ngopi, pada yang minum. Kalau nggak ada, pasti kurang pendapatannya. Iyalah bingung, ya kan?
On behalf of the WTO,
According to Antara News, Indonesia has extended its COVID-19 quarantine period for international and Indonesian travelers arriving in the country from 3 days to 1 week to anticipate the importation of Omicron variant or B11529. The foreign nationals who had ever traveled to South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, Zimbabwe, Lesotho, Mozambique, Eswatini, Malawi, Angola, Zambia, and Hong Kong, China, within the past 14 days will be denied entry. For Indonesians who return home from abroad but have ever traveled to the countries receiving the temporary entry ban, they will be quarantined for 14 days. The head of U.S. vaccine maker Moderna tells the Financial Times that existing COVID-19 jabs will struggle against the Omicron variant and it will take months to develop a new shot that works. Drug companies Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson all say they are now working on Omicron-only vaccines in a repeat of last year's jobs race.
And Vietnam is allowing COVID extra shots starting this December. Vietnam decided to treat the low-risk COVID-19 patients at home. Here's an update from our EBC correspondent in Vietnam, Ralph Wandolph Empire. Hello, Ralph.
Hi there, Alma. Pleasant afternoon. That's right. The Health Ministry on Wednesday approved administering extra COVID-19 shots at least 28 days after the final standard dose, while allowing the mix of certain vaccines. An additional vaccine dose could be given at least 28 days after the last shot of the normal course. A booster shot, meanwhile, would be given at least 6 months after the last vaccine shot, which could either be the normal course or additional dose, the ministry said. The Health Ministry's decision means a third COVID-19 vaccine dose would be given starting December, and additional vaccine shots would be given to adults, prioritizing those above 50 or that have a compromised immune systems, either by having conditions like cancer or HIV or using drugs to suppress immune responses. Additional shots could either be the same vaccine they received during the normal course or one from vaccines that utilize mRNA technologies like Pfizer or Moderna. Booster shots would also be given to adults, prioritizing those with underlying conditions and those who require long-term care, people aged 50 and above, and health workers who perform COVID-19 tests and take care of infected patients. Localities would decide on groups to receive additional or booster shots and plan vaccination accordingly. Vietnam has so far given over 120 million vaccine doses to its adult population, meaning over 94% have received at least one dose, while 68% have received 2. In other news, Alma, COVID-19 patients who are under 49, fully vaccinated, and have no underlying diseases can be self-isolated. That's according to the Health Ministry. Those patients will be taken care of by mobile task forces in their localities and provided with medicine, the ministry ruled on Wednesday. It also classified other types of patients. The medium risk group comprises people from 50 to 64 that have got 2 vaccine doses and suffer no chronic diseases, and those from 3 months to 49 that have yet to be fully vaccinated. They should be admitted to district-level COVID-19 quarantine facilities if they show symptoms of fever, coughing, a sore throat, and breathing difficulties. In case those facilities are full, they could be isolated at home if local health authorities keep a close eye on the patients. While the high-risk group comprises people over 65 that have been fully vaccinated, People with chronic diseases and fully vaccinated, those aged from 50 to 64 that suffer no chronic disease but have yet to be fully vaccinated, pregnant women, women that have just given birth, and babies under 3 months. This group must be treated at hospitals equipped with medical oxygen systems and anti-inflammatory drugs for respiratory failure. Now, the very high-risk group are those over 65 with chronic diseases or yet to be fully immunized. They must be admitted to hospitals designated for severe patients where they can easily access the ICU where necessary. In the guidance on COVID-19 treatment issued in July, the ministry ruled low-risk patients still need to be taken to hospital or quarantine facilities. Ho Chi Minh City and several other southern localities have already let low-risk COVID-19 patients be isolated at home, with the model applied on a small scale in Hanoi and Da Nang. Vietnam currently has more than 234,000 COVID-19 patients under treatment. Back to you, Alma.
Yes, Ralph, how are you doing? How is what is the status of Vietnam right now? Lockdown status? Flights from South Africa also banned?
At the moment, I don't have any information yet about banning flights from South Africa, Alma, but yeah, Vietnam is doing better, I have to say. They have allowed non-essential business to operate, but it's different now because unlike last year, if there are cases in one place, they tend to lock down all areas, for example, in Hanoi. But right now, they're only putting people under quarantine, those who are affected. So I think it's getting better and better, but we have to see yet, Alma, because of the new variant, which is already here in Asia. So I guess everyone should be careful and should take extra, precautions. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your update, Ralph. Looking forward to co-anchoring with you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alma. That's the latest here in Vietnam. Reporting live from Da Nang, Vietnam, I'm Ralph Pandopan. We'll live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, the country's fight against COVID-19 and the threat of the newly discovered Omicron variant received a boost with the arrival of 547,100 more doses of AstraZeneca vaccines donated by Poland. It marked the first time that Poland provided free vaccines to the Philippines since the onset of the pandemic last year. Let's listen in.
I can assure you that the spirit of solidarity in Polish society is strong and alive today, as it was in 1918 when we fought for our political independence from the Soviet regime.
We are very happy that more vaccines are coming to the Philippines and people are getting vaccinated, and they should take advantage of the vaccination drive these 3 days to get vaccinated.
Would like to thank the Polish nation and the Polish government for your generosity, and we are thinking that our relationship as nations is getting stronger every day.
Tamang-tama po ang dating nila para sa ating 3-day vaccination campaign ng gobyerno para sa ating mga kababayan. Ang Poland po at ang Pilipinas ay napakalapit na magkaibigan na bansa.
Palapit na ang araw, nakita natin nandito ng Omicron, baka mamaya ang mabigla tayo. So nakikita natin nasa Europe ang Omicron and other parts of the other countries, and nakikita natin mga 2 months baka dumating na sa atin yan.
Meanwhile, Thailand implemented temporary additional measures and restrictions for travelers from the countries, namely Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe as follows. Let's listen in.
Along with the globally, and these temporary additional measures are as follows. Firstly, the issuance of the new Thailand Pass QR code to all travelers from the mentioned countries will be temporarily suspended until further notice. Number 2, travelers who have already received the Thailand Pass QR code and are scheduled to arrive in Thailand before the 1st of December, which is in just around 2 days, will be subject to mandatory 14-day quarantine and will be responsible for the expense of the said quarantine. And the procedure upon arrival is, of course, including RT-PCR tests three times during the mandatory 14-day quarantine. So there's a 2-day window, actually, before the 1st of December for those who have already received the Thailand pass coming from these countries that I mentioned in Southern Africa. And number 3, travelers who have already received the Thailand Pass QR code from these countries and are scheduled to arrive in Thailand starting from the 1st of December 2021 onwards will not be permitted to enter the kingdom, except for Thai nationals. Of course, this is the ban for the aforementioned countries, the temporary suspension until further notice.
Meanwhile, the government is considering suspending the decision to replace RT-PCR tests with antigen testing for air travelers following the emergence of the COVID-19 Omicron variant, Deputy Public Health Minister Satit Pitoticha said on Monday. The Deputy Minister said RT-PCR would be more effective than antigen testing in keeping the Omicron variant out of Thailand.
Meanwhile, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres slams the unfair and ineffective travel bans targeting specific countries over the new COVID variant. Let's listen in.
So this is a very strong appeal that I launch, appeal to common sense. We have the instruments to have safe travel. Let's use those instruments to avoid this kind of, allow me to say, travel apartheid. With a virus that is truly borderless, travel restrictions that isolate any one country or region are not only deeply unfair and punitive, they are ineffective.
Dozens of countries imposed restrictions on travel from southern African states after the Omicron variant of the coronavirus was first reported in the region last week. Guterres said countries that had reported the emergence of the new strain should not be collectively punished for identifying and sharing crucial science and health information with the world. The World Health Organization has determined the overall risk for Omicron to be very high, but the WHO's Director for Africa has also spoken out against barring travelers from the continent, saying it attacks global solidarity.
During a joint press conference between Singapore and Malaysia, Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong said they want more open borders, even if the new Omicron coronavirus variant disrupts plans to expand the vaccinated travel lane, or VTL, between both countries. Let's listen in.
But we will progress step by step and get it working first. As the situation increases, we will raise the travel volumes. We aim to expand the VTL land also to include travelers, general travelers, that means not citizens and long-term residents, from mid-December onwards, taking into account the public health situation. I also discussed with the PM about a VTL-C and resuming port calls by Singapore cruise ships to Malaysian ports. And we agreed to work towards aligning safe cruise standards and start discussions on these matters, piloting port calls between Singapore and Malaysia, and also possible VTL to travel between Tanah Merah Terminal and Desaru in Johor. Of course, all this is COVID-19 permitting, because we are all watching anxiously to see what the Omicron variant of the COVID-19 does and how it will behave. But even if Omicron disrupts these plans, our goal will still be to have more open borders between Singapore and Malaysia, and I'm quite confident that after some time, we will be able to make further progress.
This morning, I crossed Tambak Johor Causeway and was received by PM Lee at Woodlands checkpoint. This in itself is very significant. It symbolizes the reopening of our borders through the launching of VTL, Vaccinated Travel Lane, and simultaneously, we also launch VTL Air. This is part of our gradual reopening of our borders to facilitate travels between the two countries.
Meanwhile, Singapore and Malaysia had eased coronavirus travel restrictions on one of the world's busiest land borders on Monday after nearly 2 years, allowing some vaccinated people to cross without quarantine. Take a look.
Pretty much, I'm excited to go back to Malaysia, to my home country. I know a lot of families have been stuck in in Singapore. This has been a good opportunity for me to go back to Malaysia to visit my grandparents, my parents, my families and stuff. Yeah.
I feel happy to be able to go back and to meet my families finally after 2 years. But I do feel a bit nervous because this is the first batch and I'm not really sure what will happen if there's any unexpected thing happens later throughout the process. For the surprise, just directly walk into the house. I don't think they know we are coming back. So after 2 years, yeah, it will be a big surprise.
Before the pandemic, about 300,000 people used to commute across the border from Malaysia every day to the neighboring city-state to work in areas ranging from public transport to electronics manufacturing. But most travel was abruptly halted in March last year, leaving many who previously commuted and other Malaysians in Singapore effectively stuck there as they needed to continue working. From Monday, vaccinated Singaporean and Malaysian citizens, those holding permanent residency status and work permits, were able to cross the 1-kilometer causeway separating the countries without having to quarantine. Initially, around 3,000 people a day will be able to cross using special bus services and will have to take virus tests. Officials say the first stage is aimed at workers who have been unable to see families for some time, and they plan to expand it later to other groups. Restrictions were also eased Monday on air travel, with vaccinated people allowed to fly between the country's main airports without quarantining.
Meanwhile, travelers from Singapore arrive at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia as coronavirus curbs limiting movement between the two countries was lifted Monday. Let's listen in.
Amazing, really amazing. Very glad, grateful. I'm back home. I'm very happy to be back home in Malaysia. I get to see my dad. It's emotional.
Oh, fantastic. This is what we are looking for. Yeah, really, really. I mean, it's so nice to come back to this country without having been quarantined. And I think the guys inside have been fantastic. They're working very hard.
And, the non-quarantine thing is really helpful because it will be very not meaningful if we go there and then we have to spend, long quarantine period. And of course, the cost involved as well. I mean, we are very excited because we haven't seen our grandchildren, and we haven't have a new grandchild there, which we haven't really seen.
Both Malaysia and Singapore, which were part of the same country during a stormy 2-year union in the 1960s, have high vaccination rates. Singapore's outbreak has been mild by global standards, although Malaysia faced a serious wave this year driven by the Delta variant. Malaysians have long been a key part of the workforce of wealthier Singapore, which has a population of just 5.5 million and then can typically earn higher salaries than back home. The easing of curbs comes despite the emergence last week of the heavily mutated Omicron strain, which is starting to spread around the world.
The news continues here on ASEAN in Focus. Crystal and I will be back right after this.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. May lalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Philippine police said today they have arrested a suspect in the 2011 murder of an Italian Catholic missionary priest who worked with marginalized tribal people in the troubled southern island of Mindanao. Catholic priest Fausto Tentorio was fatally shot outside his parish home in the upland farming town of Aracan a decade ago, but it has taken police until now to apprehend the suspect, according to the town's police chief. On Sunday, officers arrested a half-paralyzed and diabetic local politician named Ricardo Dorado. Aracan Police Chief Captain Alan Espadera said he was identified as a suspect and charged in 2019. Espadera said Dorado, 65, is a former village chief and retired member of an armed anti-communist militia group. I'm not familiar with the motive, but the priest ran a foundation that helped the poor, many of them indigenous people, according to Espadera. Dorado will be tried for murder, while police are also looking for 4 other suspects, according to the police chief. Tentorio relocated to the Philippines in 1978, a year after his ordination in Italy to pursue his evangelical mission in the Asian Catholic outpost. Mindanao is also home to Islamic State-linked armed Muslim separatists and is a hotbed of Maoist insurgency. Tentorio was with the Vatican-run Pontifical Institute for Foreign Missions, or PIME. It was its 3rd missionary to be killed in Mindanao, and PIME began its work in the Philippines in 1968. PIME's Manila office declined to comment on the arrest when contacted by AFP.
Unappointed independent human rights experts have spoken out against forced mass evictions of communities by the Myanmar army. Home demolitions of informal settlements in one township in the Yangon region left around 8,000 families homeless, and without any compensation, they said on Thursday. Citing reports, the experts said that bulldozers, armed soldiers, and police officers entered the township, pulling down makeshift huts and houses. Myanmar's military junta took power in a coup in February after declaring the results of the November 2020 elections invalid before detaining high-ranking officials and protesters. Even with martial law in place, the UN experts insisted that everyone has the right to an adequate standard of living and that those already evicted must be provided with alternative accommodation and assistance.
In other news, Russia and a number of Southeast Asian countries kicked off their first ever joint naval exercise along the Strait of Malacca, one of the world's most important shipping lanes, on Wednesday, according to the Indonesian Navy. The drills come at a time of growing tensions in the Pacific, particularly around the South China Sea, which Beijing claims almost in its entirety. All 10 members of ASEAN, Southeast Asia's regional bloc, participated in Wednesday's drills. Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, Vietnam, Malaysia, Myanmar, and Brunei provided warships or aircraft, with the Philippines taking part as a virtual observer. The exercises will continue till tomorrow, Saturday. This exercise is about peace, stability, and prosperity in the region, according to Russia's ambassador to the bloc, Alexander Ivanov, in a statement. Indonesian First Fleet Commander Arsyad Abdullah said the exercise would enhance the interoperability and understanding between Russian and ASEAN militaries. One analyst told AFP the exercise would reaffirm the ASEAN bloc's principle of non-alignment, particularly given regional tensions. Connie Rahakundini Bakri, an Indonesian military analyst from the Institute of Defense and Security Studies, said it's important for us to ensure the balance of power in our region, to reiterate that this is a non-aligned region. The bloc has previously held drills alongside the U.S. and Chinese navies, while Indonesia and the U.S. held their biggest ever annual military exercise known as Garuda Shield in August.
Cambodia's strongman Prime Minister Hun Sen, who has led the country for more than 3 decades, on Thursday backed his eldest son to take over the top job, paving the way for a political dynasty. Speculation has long simmered that the 69-year-old Hun Sen was grooming Hun Manet, a 4-star general educated in Britain and the United States, to lead the kingdom. Hun Manet is one of the candidates for prime minister and received support from his father, Hun Sen told a public ceremony in the coastal city of Sihanoukville. He added his 44-year-old son, a Royal Cambodian Armed Forces Deputy Commander-in-Chief and Commander of the Infantry, would have to face an election. Cambodia is expected to go to the polls in 2023. At the last election in 2018, Hun Sen's party won every seat in parliament after the Supreme Court dissolved the main opposition, the Cambodia National Rescue Party, a year before. Cambodian authorities have arrested scores of former opposition members and rights campaigners in recent years. Critics say Hun Sen has won back democratic freedoms and used the courts to stifle opposition and activists. Hun Sen added that his son's elevation to the top job could still be a decade away, keeping mum on his retirement plans. He is one of the world's longest-serving leaders and has been in power for 36 years.
The ASEAN Secretariat hosted an interactive webinar to commemorate ASEAN Youth in Climate Action and Disaster Resilience Day on November 25. Take a look.
Climate change is a global issue that has impacted our region immensely, and its threats continue to increase. It impacts our ability to thrive and realize our full potential as a youth. The 2021 Climate Risk Index identified ASEAN countries as among the top 15 countries which were most affected by extreme weather events for the past 2 decades. Disasters brought about by the effects of climate change have brought economic and environmental damages to our nations. As we scramble to find solutions to this global threat, there is a tendency to overlook the important role of young people in addressing this issue. The ASEAN youth must act now. Last May 2021, youth participants from ASEAN joined the ASEAN Youth Focus Session on the Committee of Youth in Climate and Action and Disaster Resilience. The recommendations made during the session encapsulates our collective vision for meaningful participation of ASEAN youth in building a truly resilient ASEAN.
The Lao People's Democratic Republic has become a member of both the WTO's Information Technology Agreement, or ITA, and ITA Expansion, or ITA-2, making it the first least developed country to join these agreements. At a press conference in Geneva, Lao PDR announced that it had finalized the domestic legislative procedures necessary to implement tariff reduction commitments starting from January 1 next year. Take a look.
On behalf of the WTO, I would like to express our warmest congratulations to the delegation of Lao PDR, and through you, to Lao PDR's government and people on your ITA and ITA-2 participation. Lao PDR has very clearly chosen to embrace trade opening, and it has done so because it believes that the multilateral trading system works. Time then now for WTO members to fulfill the promises of trade opening by ensuring that Lao PDR and its people enjoy the tangible benefits and reap the rewards of their trade opening, which in turn will surely inspire others to follow Lao PDR, and I repeat myself, exemplary example. Investment opportunities are important in Lao PDR, and it is very important, this participation in the ITA is a key step for Lao to join global value chains. I believe that Laos PDR future success in this regard will tell the most persuasive and convincing tale of the many benefits and successes of trade opening in general and of participating in the ITA and ITA-2 expansion.
We are witnessing the official announcement of joining ITA 1 and 2 agreements combined with having an attractive investment promotion law. This is a momentous occasion also to witness our nation to be an integral part to a multilateral trading system that mentioned already by DDG WTO. On this occasion, on behalf of the Lao PDR's government, I would like to reassure that this is the ending, the beginning, which we will do our utmost efforts to fully and effectively implement all commitments to these agreements. We strongly believe that a conducive legal and policy framework, as well as conducive business environment and ease to do business will help us to attract more trade and investment in ICT, thus contributing to achieve our digital economy and digital transformation agendas.
Lao is set to open a $6 billion Chinese-built railway on Friday, with debt concerns balanced against hopes it could boost the reclusive nation's struggling economy. The 414-kilometer route took 5 years to construct under China's trillion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative. Let's watch this.
การส่งมอบรถไฟลานสร้างในสุดนี้สุดที่มีความหมายสำคัญให้แก่สองชาติลาวและจีนจีนลาว
一个决定性的进展，也是中国“一带一路”倡议从老挝变陆锁国为陆联国战略对接的一个标志性的成果。
Analysts have acknowledged the potential economic boost, but have queried how infrastructure poor Laos will pay its $1.06 billion debt and whether it is ready to exploit the state-of-the-art transport system. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin said Wednesday the flagship project would give a boost to Laos' strategy to convert itself from a landlocked country to a land-linked hub. President Thongloun Sisulit is expected to hold virtual talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Friday, with both expected to deliver speeches at the official opening ceremony. The road will connect the Chinese city of Kunming to the Laotian capital Vientiane.
Interesting times.